Forget what you think you know about traditional democracies. In 2009, Bolivia unveiled a constitution that gave the classical separation of powers a very new spin. But political innovations never come without challenges. Is the country truly democratic? What exactly can the people vote for? How do its checks and balances work? And why does the country call itself plurinational? Let's explore the unique political system of Bolivia. Bolivia is defined as a free and democratic state, where its citizens can participate in elections from the age of 18. They elect representatives for each of the three traditional branches of government, but they also have possibilities for direct participation via referendums. Let's start with the executive. The President of Bolivia is the head of government as well as the head of state. He and his vice president are elected directly by popular vote for a 5-year term. To win, a presidential ticket must secure an absolute majority of the votes, or at least 40% with a 10-point lead over the runner-up. If neither of these conditions is met, a runoff election is held between the top two candidates. The executive branch is completed by the ministers, whom the president designates. The president and his cabinet have the traditional responsibilities of implementing and enforcing laws, managing the day-to-day administration of the state, conducting foreign policy, and serving as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The executive can propose laws to the Legislative Assembly, the central forum for lawmaking and political debate. In Bolivia, it is a bicameral body with a lower and an upper house. The lower house is called the Chamber of Deputies and has 130 members. Half of the deputies are elected by a direct vote, while the other half are elected by proportional representation from party lists. The upper house is the Chamber of Senators. It comprises 36 members, with 4 senators representing each of Bolivia's 9 departments. A bill must be approved by both chambers to become law. All members of the Legislative Assembly are elected for 5 years. A rather unusual feature of the Bolivian political system is the election of high-ranking judges by popular vote. The highest courts in Bolivia are the Supreme Court of Justice, which is the highest court of ordinary jurisdiction, handling civil, criminal, commercial and other non-constitutional matters, and the Constitutional Tribunal, which is responsible for interpreting the Constitution and ensuring the legality of laws and government actions. Although these magistrates are elected by universal suffrage, the candidates are pre-selected by the Legislative Assembly. This ensures the qualification of the judges and provides a list of candidates from which the populace elects 9 for each of the 2 highest courts, 1 from each department for 6 years without the possibility of re-election. This creates a unique hybrid appointment system that balances a representative system with direct democratic legitimacy. The election of judges is also special in that candidates are prohibited from campaigning. The so-called Electoral Organ takes care of these elections, while the classical separation of powers concerns the executive, legislative and judicial branches. The Bolivian constitution establishes the Electoral Organ as a distinct 4th branch of power. Its main institution is the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, which is in charge of the entire electoral process, including voter registration, the organization of polling stations, the counting of votes and the proclamation of the results. It has 7 members, of whom 6 are elected by the Legislative Assembly, while 1 is appointed by the President. They will serve for 6 years and cannot be re-elected. This framework is designed to prevent the concentration of power, and the Constitution knows various checks and balances. While the President has many competencies, he is ultimately under the oversight of the Legislative Assembly. He presents the general state budget, but its approval depends on the Assembly. He proposes laws, but needs the majority of the Parliament. The President, on the other hand, has veto power against laws passed by the Legislative Assembly and can propose modifications and another debate about the law. But eventually it is not a very powerful veto, since the Assembly can just overturn it by absolute majority. The Assembly also has a firm grip on the composition of the President's cabinet. It can question and censure ministers, leading to their possible replacement. The Vice President, however, presides over the Legislative Assembly, acting as a crucial link between the central executive and the legislature. While in other countries, like for example Germany, it is possible that the minister is at the same time a member of parliament as well as part of the government. These powers are more separated in Bolivia, since all elected officials are excluded from holding multiple offices. Judges cannot even be part of any political organization. The Constitutional Court can declare presidential decrees or other government actions as constitutional. It can do the same with laws passed by the Legislative Assembly. Its decisions are binding and final, ensuring all legislation adheres to the supreme law. The Supreme Court of Justice has the power to try the president or vice president for crimes committed in office, although this also requires the prior authorization from the Legislative Assembly. The judges themselves can also be tried. The Chamber of Deputies can accuse members of the high courts of crimes committed, and the Chamber of Senators then serves as the sole instance of trying these officials, requiring a 2/3 vote for conviction. This provides a mechanism for holding judicial officials accountable for misconduct as well. We therefore see a constitutional balance where each branch can't escape the other. There is, however, another control mechanism which goes back to the electorate itself. The citizens do not just vote for officials. In addition to the representative aspects of Bolivian democracy, there are also more direct ways to influence politics. A significant check on elected officials, including the president, vice president, and members of the assembly, is the recall referendum. Citizens can initiate a process to remove an elected official from office after they have completed at least half of their term. This requires collecting a significant number of signatures from registered voters, after which a referendum is held. The only elected officials excluded from such a revocation are the elected judges. Finally, citizens can initiate legislation through a popular referendum. The Constitution also mandates a referendum by default for some international treaties that, for example, would change the borders of Bolivia or grant authority to international or supranational institutions. While talking about all the institutions, we have left out one important aspect so far that is also extremely central for the political system, since Bolivia defines itself not as the Republic of Bolivia, but as the Plurinational State of Bolivia. By this, the country officially recognizes that it is a single state composed of multiple distinct nations, primarily its diverse indigenous peoples. The Constitution guarantees indigenous representation within various government institutions. In the Electoral Tribunal, for example, there always needs to be at least one representative from an indigenous background. The same goes for the Legislative Assembly, although the exact number required is variable, depending on population data and subsequent laws. Bolivia is currently the only country in the world that calls itself plurinational. It is also written in the Constitution of Ecuador, but not as the official name of the country. The 2009 Constitution is one of the most progressive and ambitious in the world on paper. Its application has been fraught with controversy, conflict, and interpretations that many argue have directly contradicted its spirit and letter. The gap between the constitutional text and the political reality is sometimes significant. For example, the Constitution only allows for the president to serve a maximum of 2 terms. Evo Morales, although already president before 2009, was allowed to run again twice under the new constitution. However, he managed to run for a 3rd time through a series of highly controversial legal and political maneuvers that critics argue effectively dismantled the constitutional check on presidential power. To run again in 2019, the government held a national referendum in 2016 to amend the constitutional term limits. The Bolivian people voted against it, with 51.3% voting no. This was a direct democratic rejection of extending term limits. However, in a move that triggered massive political polarization, the Constitutional Tribunal ruled that the term limits were a violation of the human rights of political candidates. This ruling effectively declared the constitutional article on term limits and the results of the national referendum to be inapplicable. This series of events led directly to the profound political crisis of 2019. Opponents viewed Morales' candidacy as illegal and unconstitutional, which created fertile ground for accusations of electoral fraud. For a large portion of the population, the very foundation of the constitutional order had already been broken. This brings us to another problem, the lack of independence of the judiciary. The system of judicial elections has a critical flaw in its design, since candidates are pre-selected by the Legislative Assembly. Usually, it is ensured that the candidates need to be a compromise between various political forces, since being a candidate requires 2/3 of the votes. But for much of the period between 2009 and 2019, the ruling MAS party held a 2/3 supermajority in the Legislative Assembly. This has led to widespread accusations that the highest courts have been filled with government sympathizers. This overwhelming political power led to what many observers described as a hyper-presidential system, where the separation of powers was significantly weakened. The parliament often acted in lockstep with the executive's agenda, and as discussed, the judiciary frequently issued rulings favorable to the government's objectives. The checks and balances envisioned in the Constitution struggled to function effectively under a single party's prolonged dominance. And what about the 4th branch of government? Its validation of the Constitutional Tribunal's ruling on indefinite re-election and its management of the 2019 elections, particularly the controversial suspension of the preliminary count, shattered its image as an impartial arbiter for many Bolivians. The subsequent audit by the Organization of American States, which found serious irregularities, solidified these doubts. However, the Bolivian Constitution of 2009 remains a powerful and aspirational document. It has permanently changed the country's political discourse, empowered indigenous groups, and enriched new social and political rights. While the system is not without challenges, it offers a valuable model for how a country can strive to create a more inclusive, accountable, and participatory democracy. By combining traditional checks and balances with innovative institutions that promote transparency, citizen participation, and social control, Bolivia has created a political framework that is both complex and, at least in its intentions, deeply democratic.